Here's the mayor of Washington, D.C. on MSNBC, praising Trump's takeover of D.C.
I want to get your take on this one because Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser says President Trump's federal law enforcement surge has led to a drop in crime in the city. But she's criticizing the presence of immigration agents and National Guard troops. At a press conference yesterday, Bowser thanked officers and reported an 87% decrease in carjackings, as well as a 15% drop in overall crime. That's just in the 20 days since the federal takeover began. Watch.
We greatly appreciate the surge of officers that enhance what MPD has been able to do in this city. We know that when carjackings go down, when the use of gun goes down, when homicide or robbery go down, neighborhoods feel safer and are safer. So this surge has been important to us for that reason.
Now, for those of you who've traveled outside the United States, have you ever been to a place but didn't know how to ask where the bathroom is? Yeah, I've been there. That's where Babbel comes in. See, Babbel isn't just some language app that you download and forget. It's the real deal. It's straight up practical, and it teaches you what to say in real conversations. The stuff that you actually use. You're not just learning words and tables. You're actually learning how to speak the language. Personally, I'm brushing up on Spanish, like hola, ¿cómo está? Or ¿cuál es tu número de teléfono? And personally, I like how Babbel keeps it tight. Interactive lessons, native speakers, speech recognition, so you ain't out there sounding like you're some clown. And with Babbel, it takes just 10 to 15 minutes a day, and you'll be making moves. They've got 14 languages, Spanish, French, German, even Turkish. You pick what fits you and your goals. And listen to this. Babbel is giving my listeners 55% off. That's right. Go to babbel.com/Nate. That's babbel.com/Nate. And you're going to get 55% off. Now with Babbel, speak a new language today. For real. Now, back to the video. Let me explain how we got to where we're at today. Back under the Biden administration, crime in D.C. exploded. I mean, it was the worst it has ever been.
Political headlines, of course, are dominating the message from the nation's capital. The city's leaders are now sounding the alarm over a much different crisis on the streets. Violent crime jumped 37% from last year, according to the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. Homicide is up 28%, with robbery up an alarming, get this, 60%. Now, a city council member is calling for the National Guard to help restore order.
There's a spirit of anarchy and lawlessness rampant through our communities. I've never seen this onslaught of violence portrayed on our women and our kids. And enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
We are clearly in a war zone. So I have spoken with the D.C. National Guard. And while I have to have more conversations with the chief of police, which I have today, and the mayor and my colleagues, we have a long way to get there. We just know that police alone is not getting it done. We're simply asking our federal partners for help and presence in our community, because we know that officers who have a handgun can combat 3 people with AR-15s and AK-47s shooting down the street.
And Shamar, we know Councilmember Trayon White last week, when he made the call, did not mince words, saying that D.C. is experiencing a war zone in the district. Now, today we did, yes, get to ask D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser about this. She said that she's happy to work with the council member, also shares his safety concerns. What's interesting is that the city has seen this before. Fox 5 D.C. pulled the archives from back in the 90s when former Mayor Sharon Pratt Kelly was calling on the National Guard to address the crime in the district, then D.C. dealing with drugs and gang violence in the city. And it was asked of the former mayor then whether making this request would be an admission that the capital city is out of control. I want you to listen to that former interview, as well as D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser's response today.
Well, I don't think that should be interpreted that way. I think we should. I'm the chief executive of the District of Columbia. I have a responsibility to provide for the public safety of our citizens, and I'll use whatever means at my disposal. I'll call upon whatever federal assistance is available.
I'm not prepared to talk about 1993. I can tell you that we're very focused on how we deploy the resources that we control, and we will continue to do that.
The crime rate is ridiculous. These past at least 10 years or so, it seems to just been increasing. I'm not sure how much the Guard could help. with that.
They should consult the police and see what they need. If they need the resources, definitely, yeah.
The kids in the community, they don't have no guidance, and their fathers and their parents can't go out there and help them because a lot of the times they don't even know the kids. So, of course, the mayor should bring in the National Guard to help police and patrol the neighborhoods. The killing is out of hand. They got to stop.
Now, also exacerbating this crime situation is that DC didn't have enough law enforcement officers to respond to criminal activity. Here is the police chief begging for more officers.
The department has had fewer than 3,400 members since December. 430 fewer officers now than we did in 2019, and likely the lowest number of officers since at least the 1970s. It will take more than a decade to reach 3,800 sworn officers if we are able to sustain even modest net gains in staffing each year.
Think about that, fewer officers than in the 1970s.
So now, follow me, people. You got crime out of control. You got the lowest number of officers since the 1970s, and you got light on crime policies. So crime is just out of control in DC. But then all of a sudden, crime started going down dramatically. At least the crime number started going down dramatically.
We're taking a closer look at crime in the district this year. DC is on pace to end 2024 with the lowest reported crime rate in 3 decades, according to recent DC police data. But it comes after a particularly violent 2023. The district saw 274 homicides, which was a 20-year high. Today, our Rafael Sanchez-Cruz spoke with DC's top lawyer, U.S. Attorney Matthew Graves. And Rafa, we know that Graves faced a lot of heat for the rise in violent crime last year. So what changed?
Yeah, that's right. And Attorney Graves pushed back on the criticism that his office lack of criminal prosecutions was hurting the fight against crime. With 185 homicides so far this year, DC is in a better place than it was last year. But Graves says one homicide in DC is too many.
During the same time last year, DC had reported over 5,200 violent crimes. The most recent police data shows today we stand at less than 3,400.
A 35% reduction in total violent crime. To put that number in historical context, that's the fewest violent crimes that have been reported in the last 30 years.
And then in 2025, crime was dropping again, all except homicides.
DC police are reporting a drop in violent crime so far this year, with one exception, murder. And you can see the red dots that is all over the map right next to me. And the names on this other side, those are all the victims, 16 of them who have been killed this year alone. Our DC reporter Felicia Ashley has been following these investigations and joins us live now from Navy Yard. So Felicia, people across DC are concerned about these deadly shootings. You're working to get answers about what city leaders are doing to keep them safe. What did you learn?
Right, and we're doing this because the main question has been what was going on Tuesday that led to 5 shootings, especially after we saw such a historical drop in crime last year. After reaching generational highs for murders in 2023, then a 35% decrease in violent crime last year, the decrease is a trend most community members want to stick with. Tuesday's 5 shootings, 4 of which were deadly, raised concerns with community members. They're asking if this is throwing public safety off track and what it means for the rest of the year.
2024, historic lows in crime. 2025, crime is still going down, even though murder is coming up again. But it seems like we don't have a problem in DC. So you may ask, well, what's all the fuss about? Well, I'm going to just say it. I don't know if you can trust these numbers. People have been sued, and even one police officer was suspended for doctoring the crime numbers to make the crime numbers look lower.
DC police commander is under investigation for allegedly making changes to crime statistics in his district.
The DC Police Union is putting its allegations on the record tonight, claiming police supervisors in the department are manipulating crime data to make it appear violent crime has fallen considerably when compared to last year. As of today, according to the DC Police website, crime is down 25%, a decrease the chairman of the police union calls preposterous. The union's allegations come as the former commander of the 3rd District stands accused of doing what the union says is being done day in and day out.
And it doesn't help that the city just settled another lawsuit from a sergeant who claimed that they were manipulating crime data back then and that they were making it seem like crime was going down when actually it was going up.
Investigation comes following a lawsuit just quietly settled out of court, filed by a former Metro Police sergeant turned whistleblower, claiming MPD routinely misclassified crimes and that, quote, districts compete against each other to get the largest reduction in the crime stats. Metro Police also confirming former commander of the city's 3rd district, Michael Pulliam, is under investigation for allegedly making changes to crime stats.
For instance, one of the key allegations is that DC publishes crime data on their own website, but those numbers are different than the numbers they publish to the FBI. Here is PBS, left-wing PBS, explaining it.
There are some oddities in the data that MPD publishes. They seem to be counting violent crimes differently, i.e. categorizing different things as violent crimes in the data that they publish versus the data that they give to the FBI. And if you look at the FBI's data, they have seen a decline in violent crime, but it is much smaller than the decline that the city's data seems to suggest. That's a discrepancy. It's a reason to sort of question the fervor of city officials when they say we don't have a crime problem. On the other hand, it's a little bit hard to claim some malign cover-up when they're reporting the true numbers to the FBI.
Now, can you really trust any of the numbers? They publish one numbers to the public on their website. Then they publish one set of numbers to the FBI. And people are getting suspended for faking the numbers, and they're settling lawsuits for faking the numbers. So Congress said, we got to investigate this. What are the real numbers in DC?
From crackdowns on the street to investigations behind closed doors, the House Oversight Committee announcing it plans to launch a probe into allegations of manipulated crime data by DC Metro Police leadership. The investigation comes following whistleblower disclosures and a settlement by DC Police related to falsifying crime stats.
Okay, so now I hope you followed me all through this video. We saw DC has a police shortage, right? Lowest police levels in the past 40 or 50 years, right? Since the 1970s. We also have manipulation of the crime data, right? Crime data was exploding in 2023. Now they've started manipulating it, allegedly selling lawsuits, suspending some of the officers, and everyone's investigating the truth behind these crime numbers, or if they can be trusted or not. So then in comes Trump, right? He looks at it and says, well, it seems like you got two problems. One, the crime stats can't be trusted. And two, you have a man shortage problem, right? You've been saying, hey, we've got the lowest numbers of police. We can't hire enough. So we can augment that by having the feds come in and give you the amount of officers you need to do your job. Now, remember, Democrats were begging for this earlier. Biden said no. And Trump comes in and says, we're going to do exactly what you asked for because you don't have enough officers, as you've been complaining about. And as you saw earlier, crime has dramatically decreased. And Trump is saying, hey, we can also do this in other cities, right? Because other cities have also been claiming that they have a manpower shortage when it comes to law enforcement. So we can augment that in the meantime until you guys get more officers. For instance, in Chicago has the same exact problem. The police department essentially is saying they got a crisis. They're down 2,000 officers.
A barrier to keeping events like Mexican Independence Day safe, a major Chicago police officer shortage.
CBS News' Jermont Terry is always investigating, telling us just how many officers are needed and why this is such a serious problem.
Chicago's skyline is breathtaking, yet there are people holding their breath, wondering if CPD is ready for the months ahead.
What we're doing right now is making the best with the number of officers that we have.
Police Superintendent Larry Snelling recently acknowledged his department's shortcomings.
We are down. We're down close to 2,000 officers.
Well, that's a huge concern.
So says Anthony Riccio, retired first deputy superintendent. He spent 34 years with CPD.
When you're down that number, that large a number of officers, that's going to show up in the neighborhoods and the communities where people are looking for more police officers, particularly with the summer coming up.
There were always officers around, and we just don't see that anymore.
So with 2,000 officers down, you would think if someone, whoever, comes and says, hey, we can send you 5,000 law enforcement officers to help crime go down, to help you do your job. You would think Brandon Johnson would say, yeah, if I can get 5,000 more officers, law enforcement officers, yeah, that would be great. That would help solve the problems, keep the city safe. Here's how he answers that question. If the federal government were to fund 5,000 more officers. Listen to his answer.
So let me ask you, Mr. Mayor, those all sound like great programs. I'm curious, would you also like to get federal funding to help put 5,000 more cops on the street in Chicago? Would that help drive down crime?
Well, look, policing by itself is not the full strategy.
No, I understand that. You've talked about the other things you want, and I said those are good and important programs, but I'm asking also, would 5,000 more police officers on the street in Chicago be helpful to go along with all of those social programs that a lot of cities are engaging in and having success with?
Well, look, here's the best way I can put it, Joe, is that in the 90s when I was in high school, we had 3,000 more police officers and we had 900 people being murdered every single year in Chicago. It's just not policing alone. Of course, we want more detectives.
I know it's not policing alone, but I know it's not policing alone. You've told me everything else you want. I'm curious, and this does come down to an ideological difference between people. Do you believe that the streets of Chicago would be safer if there were more uniformed police officers on the streets of Chicago?
I believe the city of Chicago and cities across America would be safer if we actually had, affordable housing. Look,
okay,
I'm not saying that
that's not the question I asked. My question is, and I just need a yes or a no, do you believe the streets of Chicago would be safer if you got all of those other extraordinary programs put back into place, which do have a history of being successful, if that's complemented by having 5,000 more cops on the streets of Chicago?
I don't believe that we should narrow it down to just police officers, Joe, is what I'm saying. That is an antiquated approach. I'm saying we've invested in detectives.
Mr. Mayor, are you hearing what I'm saying? I'm agreeing with you that all of these other social programs are extraordinarily important. I just need a yes or a no, and then this will be the last time I ask. If you get all of those other social programs that 800 million that New York City does, Los Angeles, other people do with great success, would an additional 5,000 cops on the streets in Chicago help complement those programs to make Chicago safer?
Look, we are working hard to make sure that our police department is fully supported. I don't believe that just simply putting out an arbitrary number around police officers is the answer. What I'm saying is policing and affordable housing.
Now, think about this, people, because I want to be very clear here. Joe asked him specifically, he asked Brandon Johnson specifically about funding. The federal government says, hey, you need 2,000 officers. I'm going to give you $5,000 funding so you can do whatever you want. You hire your own officers, 5,000 more uniform officers under your control. We'll give you the money to do that. Would that help, right? At first he said, with a lower crime, he struggled with that. Would 5,000 more officers help because you're down 2,000? He can't say yes. That shows you how sick in ideology he is. He'd rather people die on the street than solve the problem. The Republicans say, hey, here's the 2,000 officers you need. He'll reject that just because it came from the Republicans. That is not serving your community. That's just playing with people's lives. So now let's see how it all plays out in D.C. because they've got a huge crime reduction. Everyone seems to be happy with the progress. The Democrats had to admit that, hey, this is remarkable stuff. Crime is really going down for the month that this has been going on. We'll see if other cities will be open to it, right? And I think people need to understand when the National Guard is used in policing, especially like in cities and towns, it's usually the governor that says, hey, we need the National Guard in this particular area. For instance, I'll give you a quick example. In New York, the governor of New York State sent the National Guard into the New York City subways because people felt that crime was a problem. Crime stats were saying that crime was actually down, but people felt that crime in the subways were just so bad. So what did the governor do? As a show of force, she sent the National Guard into the subways just to make people feel safer.
Expect to start seeing hundreds of National Guard members throughout the subway system conducting random bag checks.
Hochul was asked why use National Guard members instead of investing more dollars into NYPD overtime.
Rather than having the NYPD have to work being paid by state dollars, I said, let me do something even better. Let me bring more people to the process right now.
Now, obviously, this is pretty much the same thing as Trump is doing. So I'm just going to say it. For the Democrats, I don't think it's about saving lives and actually reducing crime. I think it's just for show. And I think with Trump, it is about reducing crime. It's like, let's solve the problem. I'm tired of the excuses. I'm tired of BS. If there's something we could do now to just change it, let's do that. And the Democrats are just against that. Remember, these are black and brown people in Washington, D.C. who are getting killed, in New York are getting killed, in Chicago are getting killed. And the supposed racist is saying we need to send people in there to stop those black and brown people from getting killed. And he's the racist. It just doesn't make any sense. And the people who don't want the help, even though they were begging for the help, are not considered to be the racist. Brandon Johnson essentially saying it's okay that all these black and brown people die as long as we don't have that guy help us. Kathy Hochul is saying, hey, it's okay to let black and brown people die in these horrible neighborhoods as long as the guy in the White House doesn't help us. And at that point in time, are they really working for you or are they working for themselves? Don't forget, like, share, subscribe. In the comment section, make sense of this stuff. My name is Nate the Lawyer. I'm out. Peace.